Liberation, you had something.
Yeah. Here's the tack that I'm going to take with John Redfern.
Okay.
Is that Aunt Nancy is a power, and he represents a different level of existence than you or I. And by playing his game, I've come to understand part of myself. And then maybe if you play your part in this game, then it'll grant you some kind of understanding too.
He asks if you would show the same consideration for one of the draconic powers, one of the evil powers, one of the demonic powers. Perhaps if you were to play the game of, say, what's one of the evil gods? Techesis, we'll say. Why not? If Techesis approached you, the 10-headed...
Does live on Kryn?
I think she's Dragonlance, yeah.
Yeah.
She's like a 10-headed black dragon or something.
Yeah.
No, do the Eberron god that just shows up at people's funerals sometimes to glare at them.
Everything about Eberron is...
Or wait, no, is that Forgotten
terrible.
Realms? That might be
I think
Forgotten Realms.
that's so far.
Forgotten Realms, there's the god of death just sometimes shows up in cemeteries to glare at funerals. Like, that's literally a thing he does.
But yeah, that's what... He asks, would you show the same consideration if one of the evil gods asked you to play a game? Perhaps if you did Techesis' bidding for a certain amount of time, you would learn something about yourself as well. Does that make it worth doing?
Well, no, because... Well, I mean, I follow a goddess of light, so no. But I don't think that Aunt Nancy is inherently evil, if that's what you're saying.
Well, he's saying, why have you deemed this game worth playing, but not the machinations of other gods? Why is this the one you've chosen to have dealings with?
It's the one that's presented itself to me. None of the other gods' machinations have made themselves apparent to me, so this is the first one.
So the reason you don't work for Techesis is the opportunity hasn't yet presented itself.
Correct, but I probably would not, given what little I know about her.
Redfern gives you the impression that he's not looking for any kind of spiritual enlightenment. He doesn't need to learn anything else about himself. He knows all there is to know about his place in this world, and where he's what he's more interested in is what his place will be in the next life, what his world will be on his next journey. And what's Liberation's response to that?
Maybe Aunt Nancy, maybe meeting Aunt Nancy and talking with him would give you some idea of that.
He asks about the nature of your own reincarnation.
I won't hold any secrets back about that.
So you tell him why you were in the City of Brass.
Oh yeah.
And you tell him what you were doing there, and of course you tell him that your being in the City of Brass had nothing to do with Aunt Nancy.
Yeah.
So your own admission is that it wasn't until you followed your own path, and not the machinations of this god, that you found your next level of enlightenment.
But at the same time, I wouldn't have met the companions that I had in the City of Brass without his direct influence. I wouldn't have met Serenity or Mahogany or Riot or any of them.
And when the subject of companions comes up, Redfern kind of sadly points out that his own companions have been chosen for him, and they are people that could not conceive of the path of enlightenment that he walks. People who do not hold to the Godsman's ideas and couldn't even hope to understand them. So here's what he wants from you.
Okay.
Well, you go ahead first.
I was about to say, well, I have a fairly eclectic bunch myself, and we've somehow, I don't know how, but we've managed to somehow not kill each other in the process of working together.
Redford personally holds himself to a higher ideal than simply not killing the people that he works with.
Also, that's not true.
You guys didn't kill me.
One of them swung you like a pendulum. That was fun.
Yeah?
Here's what Redford wants from you.
Okay.
If you could convince any of these other middle bobs, any of these distant relatives of his who he believes have lost their way, to walk his path of enlightenment, which, remember, to him means to become one with nature. Because all of them have lost their way from that path in one way or another, whether it's in pursuit of gold, like the Patriarch or the various shopkeepers, or pursuit of glory, like Kikina, or pursuit of dark magic, like Sprig and Red. If you can convince any of them to come back to the folds, he will consider the journey worthy.
I'll see what I can do.
Seems like Cherry Ivy would be the best bet there. She's young, impressionable.
I'm sure Riot would love that idea. So all we have to do is convince this young, impressionable girl that there is a better path to walk and not let her make her own decision.
Riot loves convincing people that she knows what path that they should walk.
All right. Sue. Kelian, what's your approach here?
The middle bobs made my crossbow, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, you commissioned it from them.
Okay, then Kelian's approach would be far before he ever meets with Cherry Ivy, would be to commission a very intricate puzzle mechanical toy.
Okay.
And he would tell Dinkflink explicitly what it's for. It's for Cherry Ivy.
Okay. So you're going to give this to her as a gift? Is that the idea?
Kind of, yeah. But yeah, once it's been commissioned, he would. If I don't know if Dinkflink is interested in going with me to this place, or wherever the parents are. I'm assuming they are in Sigil, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So he would pay them parents a visit with the toy.
Okay. Yeah, Dinkflink will go along with that.
Okay. Good. This got way more fun. And Kelian approaches, knocks on the door.
And you're welcomed in. Of course, Dinkflink is always welcome. The family is very happy to meet a friend of the Middlebob brood. Mm. How do you have yourself be introduced?
Just that I'm a friend of Dinkflink's.
Okay.
With that kind of emphasis.
Almost afraid to ask what happens next. Like,
tell them you're the shadow broker.
So what happens next?
Kelian wastes no time in giving Cherry Ivy this toy to play with.
And she thanks you very politely for the gift and begins to puzzle it out.
And Kelian watches for a few moments as she plays with it. And then he turns to the parents and he asks, so, how much has Dinkflink told you about Aunt Nancy?
And at this, the parents kind of exchange glances. And they usher you into the sitting room so you can talk out of earshot of the young girl.
That doesn't seem very necessary to me, but okay. I'll play along for now.
And there is a very quick and curt discussion between them and Dinkflink. Something to the effect of, we told you not to broach this subject here again. And Dinkflink gives you a look like, This was your best idea? We've already tried this.
Kelian holds up his hand and nods. He
Okay.
understands. You have to understand the adventures that I went on, the companions I have met, the money I have made. They are an experience of a lifetime for this young girl. To be her age and experience these kinds of things, they would be so formative. They would be so instructive. Not to mention, in the company of other middle bobs, she would be able to experience the family and the trade and get to know distant cousins and the patriarch. And his approach is business proposition.
Okay.
Like, he's trying to sell them that this is a very good idea, that this is something they need to do.
And the father's response is, you want my daughter at her age to go to a place like Pandemonium. And he looks at Dinkflink, and Dinkflink looks at the ground.
It's not that bad. I've been there. I mean, if it would make you feel better,
don't
you can
worry.
travel with the girl if it makes you feel that uncomfortable.
He tells you, don't
Go
worry.
as a family.
We've heard all about Pandemonium and what it was like.
I mean, you can go with the girl. There is no rule saying that you guys couldn't go as well. How often do you get to travel and get to know the various middle bobs of your family?
Here's the
Your
wall that
extended
Kelian's going to end up hitting. They're gnomes, which means they're inherently curious about everything in the multiverse. Gnomes are very prolific adventurers. They don't have any problem with their daughter growing up and becoming involved in the acquisition side of the Middle Bob family. In fact, the way things are going, that's probably what's going to end up happening. What they're going to need to be convinced of is that this is something that should start at an age of 12. She doesn't have any combat experience. She doesn't know how to use a weapon. She doesn't have any spellcasting ability. She has no way to make herself useful on a journey like this. And she has no way to defend herself from any kind of danger.
And with that, Kelian looks to Dinkflink for some sort of prompt and like, well, surely at some point this happens with all of the young ones in the Middle Bob Company, correct?
And the response is young, but not that young. So what Kelian's going to have to do is convince them that, one, Cherry Ivy can be useful, and two, that it's worth the risk at this age. That if news come back that they go off to the Outlands or wherever their cache of goods is, and word comes back that she was killed, that the adventure was still worthwhile. It's one thing if she's an adult and makes the decision herself. It's another thing if it's their decision and they make it for her. Did Serenity have another task in this Middle Bob thing? I think she was pretty much...
No, I think she's got it pretty easy. Sorry, just gonna get wasted.
Yeah, she had to convince the sensei to go see incredible things.
Right.
Yeah.
What is their response when Kelian's like, well, you can go with her if that makes you feel better?
Neither of them are adventurers. That's not the path that they've chosen. They are like low-level spellcasters. They work for Middle Bob Acquisitions as far as like identifying magical gear, making sure that magical gear that comes back isn't hazardous or dangerous. So they're useful to the clan, but they're not adventurers. They have no desire to go on this journey.
Have you asked Cherry Ivy what she wants? Sorry, I can't believe that question came out of my mouth.
The mother tells you that
Kelian is such a scumbag.
The mother tells you that if Cherry Ivy had her way, she would ask for chocolate cake for dinner 7 nights of the week. But as her
Kelian
parents,
waves his hand dismissively.
I had chocolate cake for dinner every day, and see where I turned out.
As someone Okay, sorry. As someone who grew up without parents, I believe I turned out just fine. I had no supervision. I was left to my own means, and look at me now.
Look at
Cherry-
you now.
Cherry Ivy, meanwhile, will be in good hands, in good company, with your family.
We're like 5 minutes from Kelian insinuating that if they don't agree, Cherry Ivy might grow up without parents.
I'm just
No.
I'm just loving like how many rungs of the scumbag ladder Kelian is climbing.
Hey, the party is the ones like Kelian should deal with the child. So this is his approach.
Make a persuasion check. And just keep the result to yourself for now. Riot.
Mm-hmm.
You have your work cut out for you.
Apparently, I gave myself the 2 hardest people.
You do have Mahogany with you, though.
Yeah.
Mahogany is, yeah.
So, who are you going to try to have a sit down with first?
Kakina, because whether I can get her in is going to factor into my approach for Middlebop II.
Okay. Finding her band of merry men proves to be impossible. But when the word gets out that you're looking for her, eventually some of them find you in the wilderness. They put bags over your head, take you out to their secret headquarters. And Kikina's curiosity is incredibly piqued. She, of course, has also been she has had the Aunt Nancy visions. She knows the identities of the other people that she's supposed to go with. And she asks you straight away whether or not you've spoken to her idiot father.
Not yet. That he was last on our list.
And she asks how you intend to get him to pursue this.
I'll frame it as a competition.
Okay?
I'll tell him, and this is almost true.
That's about as good as you're going to get from Riot.
Yeah. That if he doesn't come, you get everything. And not just the prize, but the glory, the name. He's the patriarch of this clan, right? It's life work building it up. If he doesn't come along, all of that work will be undone by you. Yours will be the middle mob names ringing out throughout the multiverse. Yours will be the one with the power and the money and the wealth and the influence, not his.
So you're
When
saying
people talk of the Middle Bob Company, they will talk of Kakina's Middle Bob Company.
if Kikina goes on this adventure, but Middle Bob II doesn't, she's the one that's going to get the money and the glory and whatnot.
Exactly.
She asks what possible use she could have for money.
And I'll tell her, I ask myself the same question all the time. The money I get, and believe me, I've gotten a lot of it, I give away. And I understand that you're in the business of doing the same.
She nods and she finds that perfectly noble.
Not all of my associates do, of course, and some of them take it and have enriched themselves quite well. They're running successful businesses now. One of them is running 2 of them. Others have used it to elevate their status within the city, within the factions of Sigil. Are you aware of them? Just as
She has no idea.
okay. Suffice to say, city run by several factions. Others of my members belong to competing ones, etc., etc. Anyhow, all of my companions, at least the ones who are participating materially, reap the most reward. I have 7 companions. Some of them choose not to participate in as much as a bare minimum as they can. They tend to get almost nothing out of the experience. But myself and my 4 closest friends, we have gotten very, very much indeed. And as I said, it's gone. My share of it has gone to noble causes.
She could definitely think of a lot of good to put that sort of wealth to use for. So here's what she tells you. She is only willing to sit at a table with her greedy, terrible father if you convince him to give half of his wealth to the poor. That's it. That's what it's going to take.
Mm-hmm.
Get him to agree to that term, and you've got her support.
Well,
but that's the only way she will ever work with him. Otherwise, she can't look him in the face.
Let's see what I can do. Have you got... It might go easier if you have... Well, I'll think about it.
Getting to see Middle Bob II is actually not that difficult because you're in good standing with his son, and he is quite proud and fond of his son and all the good works that he does in Sigil. And he is ancient. He is beyond ancient. And he has this awesome mechanical flying chair that putters around with steam coming out of it.
That is awesome.
And how do you approach him?
With much the same story that I just gave Kakina.
Okay.
I'll tell him you're in danger, and you're in danger along 2 lines. One is that there are these demons who are going around killing the members of the opposing teams. And I'll tell him whether or not you've signed on, whether or not actively pursuing this game, these demons consider you to be, and then you in fact are a member of an opposing team. At some point, they will come for you, and if you don't have the support of your fellow teammates, it will be messy. But that's not the danger, because you're surrounded by family, you're surrounded by loved ones, by hirelings. You're as well protected as anyone can be from the physical dangers of this game. The other danger you're facing is much more severe.
He's listening.
You're the patriarch of the clan. You're Middlebob II. When people talk in Middlebobs, they talk about it's your name they're using, Middlebob II, and all of his sons and his daughters and his grandsons and granddaughters and so on down the line. And everyone's paying a tithe to you, right?
That's more or less true, yeah.
Yeah. If this game goes on without you, as I assure you it will, Kakina has already expressed her interest. She gets everything. She gets the name, she will have the power, she will have unfathomable wealth that we have been amassing from this game. And then when people speak of Middlebobs, it won't be Middlebob II and all of what he's built. The clan patriarchy will be the matriarch. It will be Kakina's name.
He tells you that...
Unless you are there to keep her in line. Unless you are there to claim your rightful share of the glory for yourself.
You have to explain this a couple of different ways, because the old man seems confused. And he leans in, he has you kind of reword it a few times. And the point of confusion, you eventually realize, is that you're explaining to him a danger when really that's something that he actively wants and would pursue, for his daughter to pick up the mantle of the Middlebob name, take share in the family's wealth, do work in pursuit of the family's goals. That's something that he's wanted her entire life. Mm-hmm. So the point of confusion is you've convinced Kakina of this, to come back into the fold and stop playing these ridiculous forest games. This is something she's agreed to.
Oh, I haven't convinced her to come back to your fold. I've convinced her to play the game.
He's willing to work with Kakina if you can give your word that she will quit playing the ridiculous forest games, sit her chair at the table, and do her part in the family business.
I'll say, of course I'll give you my word on that. But there is one condition. I have spent a considerable amount of effort convincing the 8 of you to get together. I have tracked down the lost members of the clan. I've spoken to those who didn't want to do Section 4. I've undergone personal torture at the hands of Finis Overwhistle to get the 8 of you together. And if you play this game, you will owe me for that. It will just be a share of what you get from the game, not from your personal wealth. It's so vast that you don't need this. But you will owe me half of what you make from the game. Otherwise, why would I go to all this trouble?
He asks why indeed.
I want half of your share, just from the game, not from life. Look, you have from the various holdings, the various businesses you own. You'll never miss this. Half what you make from the game will be mine.
What's Mahogany's response to that demand when Riot makes it?
Mahogany has a separate idea, but he's going to bring it up to Riot afterwards because she's running the show in here.
Okay. He's not going to agree to give anything to Riot without knowing exactly what he's agreeing to. He has no idea how much wealth this is going to bring in. He has no idea whether Riot's exaggerating. Although where Finis Overwhistle is concerned, he's... she's probably not. He also believes that Riot she stands a lot more to gain than she's letting on from the middle bobs coming together. So he gives you no guarantees.
Mm-hmm.
He's willing to revisit the idea of negotiating once he's had a chance maybe to speak with his son, to kind of learn more about what this game might bring the family. But it's a non-starter if you can't convince Kekina to come back.
And I say that she and I have an agreement. She's already agreed to do this.
So what's Mahogany's thing? I'm interested in
Mahogany
hearing this.
brings up to Riot once they leave.
Mm-hmm.
He says, "You've got two people here. One of them wants half the money of the other one, and the other one wants and he wants Kekina to become part of the Middlebob family again.
Right.
Why don't you convince Kekina? Why don't you try to convince the two of them that he'll give half of his personal money away, and Kekina is the one who gets to choose how to spend it. But in exchange, Kekina just has to make clear that this is part of the Middlebobs giving back to the community."
I framed it that way because this way they owe me something, and they don't hate me the way that they hate each other.
I don't think you're right that he hates Kekina. I think Kekina maybe is upset at him and thinks that he doesn't care about what she wants.
Well, I've said what I'm going to say to Middlebob II, but I suppose I could at least make that offer to Kekina.
I think that if you made that offer to Kekina, that she come back to the company and she's in charge of making sure that the Middlebob company has a good name by giving away half of its profits, that he would be on board if she agreed.
I'll broach it to her.
So Kelian.
And yeah, okay.
Yeah.
How are we finishing up with Cherry Ivy?
Do you want to know what I rolled for persuasion, or should I still hold that for now?
Do want to know what you rolled for persuasion.
22.
22.
And then Kelian will make one last appeal to being of the greater good of the Middlebob company. And that still a very formative adventure, but for the good, it is for the best of the Middlebob company if they participate in it as his game. If they need time to think about it, I will understand.
Okay. they are willing to agree because this glorious Aasimar has come into their house and say, I didn't have any parents, and look how I turned out. They wring a lot of assurances out of Dinkflink. That Dinkflink will protect her from the dangers of the journey and any monsters and probably Spriggan Red.
Kelian. Sorry, keep going.
But not without a great amount of reservation. They agree to it, but you can tell they're extremely uncomfortable with it. Like, if she goes and something were to happen, like, it would create a deep rift in the family kind of thing. I'm assuming Kelian's fine with that?
Yeah, Kelian doesn't give a shit. I mean, Kelian, I think, was the sole voice saying, "Who cares about the Dinkflinks? That's one less team we have to worry about." So,
okay, that's true.
He is cooperating for the sake of the group to try and make this happen.
Kelian's thinking, man, that's one easy way to take this team out when they're number 2.
Okay.
Would Kelian murder a kid? I think he would.
Liberation.
Yes. What can I do for you, sir?
How are you going to finish up with...
Well, he did say
Redford?
that I was supposed to try and convince another one of the Middlebob family to go and renounce the life of mercantilism for idyllic nature, etc., etc.
That would definitely be a start. So what's his approach to that?
One more thing.
Yeah.
Sorry. Well, give McDohl some time to think about
Go right
this.
ahead. Yeah.
As we're leaving the house, I turn to Dinkflink and I say, "I didn't even need to take the toy back. I figured I had to take the toy back and have the kid annoy the shit out of her parents, and didn't even need to worry about that. Kid got a toy out of it." What's Dinkflink's reaction to that?
Great worry, because she also sees that this is a potential problem as far as family harmony. If her niece comes with her and something terrible happens, like this, there's going to be a fracture between her branch of the family and the main branch.
Kelian nods. He's like, "You gotta take that up with Aunt Nancy. This is his idea."
So, Nick, going with the rest of the family, who do we have that might be amenable to this kind of a thing?
Cherry Ivy, Blink maybe.
I don't think Dinkflink is too amenable.
Possibly Gegeso, because, I mean, speaking from metagame perspective here, he's the only one without class levels, right? He's basically a lump of dough for John Redfern to mold in his shit, whatever philosophies he wants to preach.
That's probably
you're not going to get Middlebob second. You're not going to get Kekina.
Yeah.
You're definitely not going to get Spriggan Red.
Nope.
Yeah, those three I think are off the table, but the others, I don't know.
I'm thinking Geso might be the best avenue because
Possibly.
yeah.
Okay, so how do you sell it to Gegeso? Because remember, he was the one who was running the big store.
Oh, I had an answer to him in our conversation.
Okay.
From before the break.
And your answer is what?
He said, why can't he just send a bunch of people? And I'm going to tell him for the same reason why each of the rewards has been appropriate for the person who has been receiving it.
Mm-hmm.
Each of the challenges has also been appropriate for the person who's there. So if he doesn't come along, then if there comes a situation where his skills are needed, and I'm not going to mention what skills those are. I'm going to assume he thinks that he's really good at something.
Okay.
then the rest of the team is out of luck.
It's like there's going to be in a dungeon, there's going to be a door with a big Sudoku cube on it. And they're going to be like, where's Kagesa when we need him?
I got a big Genasi-shaped lock here that I need to get him to get into this hole.
No, I mean, I'm thinking what... Well, I mean, looking at it this way, Aunt Nancy picked the 8 of us because we're all different people, different walks of life, different outlooks on things that we're not able to... That with the understanding that we would need to be able to work past all these differences. And so I'm wondering if the reason why these people, they've kind of fallen to the wayside is because they haven't tried to. Maybe if we just get all 8 of them in the same place and talking, maybe they will figure it out somehow.
And this, you're telling this to Gageso?
Well, no, I'm just kind of musing out loud to myself right now. Yeah.
Only child.
Serenity.
Yeah.
Dwath's people get in touch with you. And they have taken captive a criminal that they think you'll probably want to meet.
Do they give me any more information on that, or?
Not out in public, no.
Okay.
Meeting back at Dwath's little headquarters, which is much nicer and better equipped now that you've given him like 1,000 gold pieces.
Got a Keurig.
They show...
Oh my god.
They take you to the little room where this man has been worked over. And in one side of the room, you see a pile of Mercy Killer armor that's been pulled and cut off of this guy. They assure you that the beating he took was in the scuffle on the street. And that none of his wounds are mortal, even though he looks like whatever he might complain about. But the reason he thinks, a Dwath thinks you want to speak to him, is we've learned that he's not a Mercy Killer. We've learned that he's an anarchist wearing Mercy Killer armor. And we think he knows something about this Watcher of yours. Dwath turns to his companions, tells them that Serenity's going to need a few minutes with the prisoner, give you a candle, close the door behind you.
Chair, or what's the actual state? What do we have in this room?
Not a lot. I mean, if you request one, they can have a chair brought in.
Okay.
No other source of light except the candle. It's not an official prison cell. There's not actually a prison cell in this little building that they're using, but it's a room they've cleared out for this purpose, for short-term prisoners to be kept in interrogations.
Is he conscious?
Oh yeah, and he looks very defiant.
What cell are you in?
And he looks around, says at the moment, this one.
Very funny. What cell are you in?
He looks you up and down. And he tells you he's not going to talk to you. He tells you you can kill him, torture him, pull his fingernails out. Doesn't matter. However you get your rocks off. Get it? Because she's an Earth... Yeah, you got it. You're fine.
I got it.
Genasi slayers.
Well, I mean, I'm in riots, and I think I've got these guys duped. What about you?
He just lets out this very unkind laugh. Shakes his head. Says, sorry, I don't buy it.
Mm-hmm. working with someone who's trying to take down the current hardhead leadership. Why do you think I'm doing that?
And he laughs again. He says, "What the fuck do I care who's in charge of the hardheads?"
You're an anarchist. You want no one in charge of anything, just like me.
He asks, "What the fuck you know about it?"
There's not really more specific of a plan from any group I've ever worked with. Most cells barely are capable to keep themselves from tearing them apart. I'm taking down the hardheads.
He wishes you the best of luck. And then, very painfully, turns his body so that he's facing the corner of his cell rather than you. Typically, at this point, whenever Dwath and his people establish that one of these prisoners they've brought in, whatever crimes they've committed, typically they'll turn them over to the Harmonium through whatever safe avenue they can. That's the ones that survive the scuffles and get captured. So once you're done with this guy, that's probably what's going to happen. You ask him what he knows.
Yeah.
And he blows you off again. He's not going to tell you anything. He has no reason to talk to you.
I'm trying to remember, has Riot ever been here?
No.
Just you and Elsie Clone was here. I think those were the only two.
Okay.
However, when you mentioned Riot, he definitely knew the name.
Yeah.
So what's next with this guy?
I mean, I don't have any other brilliant ideas. I mean, I'll ask Dwarf what he specifically said that made him think that he knew about the Watcher.
And Dwarf brings in one of the indepts that he's been working with. And he points to his head, says, "I jumped into his mind, put some things together."
Nice trick. Anything else you can tear out of him? I wasn't able to trick him.
He shakes his head and says, "He shut me down pretty quick. Anarchists have a lot of tricks to push you out once you get in."
I mean, the only things I could see we could do with him is turn him into the hardheads, or we could let him escape and follow him. If we think he might be useful. Stage a fight. Somebody jumps the group that's going to turn him in.
And who is going to do the following? Is Serenity going to follow him?
She actually, yeah. You know what? Pass without trace. Serenity can totally do that.
My Ravenloft group just very recently discovered the beauty of Pass Without Trace. They just started using it, and now it's their favorite spell. So they have a discussion about how they're going to do it, and you guys stage your little fight. At one point, the door gets knocked open, and sure enough, prisoner manages to escape. And so you're going to tail him to wherever he goes.
Yep. Just pass without trace and try and keep my head down.
Okay. Make a stealth roll.
I think this is the first. No, we've made a couple of rolls this session.
Yeah, there's been a few and far
I failed
between.
one.
Because
In front of me.
Cool.
No, we passed without trace. Yeah, that's right. We rolled a 1 earlier.
yeah,
Yep. Passed without trace. That'll come out to a 12. I'm gonna believe point that.
You have a 0 in stealth?
Isn't pass is plus 10, right?
yeah.
Yeah, but I'm asking, do you have a 0 in
13.
stealth?
Yeah, 13.
A 13?
But I'm gonna believe point that and reroll it.
Okay.
Can only do one worse, so not a bad use of that.
Yeah, no problem.
There we
Hey!
23.
You tail him to a bar in the clerk's ward, near to the Hall of Speakers. And you watch him get a minor ass beating by somebody, a group of people. But after the ass beating is administered, he's picked up off the ground, brushed off, dragged inside to this bar. Do you go in or do you wait for him to emerge?
How long have I been following him?
I mean, Dwat's place is over in the Hives. I mean, you've been walking all the way across Sigil. So it's been a little while.
I'll slip in.
Okay.
Just try not to draw attention to myself.
The men who worked him over a little bit are members of, you presume, his anarchist cell.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of you're stupid enough to get caught, this is what happens kind of thing. What you're able to glean is that this cell, they at least believe they're working to bring down Factal Nilesia. That all of them are former mercy killers who turned their back on the faction when Nilesia gave her proclamation. They felt that it was... Well, they don't give their reasons, but...
Yeah.
And now they're working within the faction to bring them down, and their goal is to use the Watcher to do this. And the conversation is mostly about whether or not they could convince his son to leave Nilesia's side.
Whose son? The Watcher's son?
The Watcher's son. And I have a name for you. If I can find it in my incredibly messy list here.
Kelian.
You wish. God, I'm going way, way back here.
Ball breaker.
What I'm going to do is sort this. Just go to the Mercy Killers here. It's a name that you've heard before, actually. Aasimar. Aasimar is one of the factors in the Mercy Killer and one of Nilesia's biggest supporters.
Okay.
He was standing at her side when she gave that proclamation. Do you interject in this conversation, or do you just listen?
No, as soon as I get that much, I'm just going to kind of leave a couple copper on the table, dust myself off, and quietly leave.
Okay. And what do you do with the information?
Probably track down Kelian.
Okay. So let's go back to this middle bob clusterfuck. So you tell Kakina what?
I tell her that the old man he actually wants you to inherit part of his business, which she presumably knew, but suggested it could be a way to get a lot more gold out of him and the family than a paltry half of what he makes on whatever this journey is.
So do you tell her what his condition was?
No. That I'm just going to lie to him that she agreed to.
Okay.
Because that's all going to sort itself out long after the game is over.
So just to be clear, he's agreed to take half of his wealth and give it away to the more deserving than his own creatures. He's agreed to this.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have...
Oh, sorry. sorry, I didn't realize we were having an in-character conversation. Specifically, he has agreed to give half of his earnings to me. I will deposit them either to you or to any charity of your choice.
So to half of the earnings from the adventure.
Was that not the deal?
No, she was asking for half of his wealth.
Ah.
Half of everything. They were both asking you for something impossible.
Yeah. It seems like... How many brothers and sisters do you have?
Living?
Living.
Only Middle Bob III. They have, or he has a lot of, like, grandnieces and grandnephews who have had descendants, but as far as his living sons and daughters, just her and Middle Bob III.
Then it seems to me like Mahogany was right. And each of you can get what you want by agreeing to what the other asked for.
So what does Mahogany point out here?
Mahogany asks her how much she thinks her father makes in a year.
And she is sure she doesn't know.
Just name some astronomical sum, right? Like he's... The amount that he's willing to exploit is just huge. If you're able to get half of that, as he wants you to take over the company again, and you can spend that for the better good, not for yourself. Live like you do now if you want. Live in a small home, not surrounded by wealth like he does, and give half of it away in the name of the Middle Bobs to whoever you think is most deserving.
Half of it would be yours anyway, because there are only two inheritors. There's Middle Bob III and there's you. And if you come to the table, then half of everything he has is yours anyway.
She asks the two of you what you stand to gain from this. Why are you here? Why are you here playing this mediation? Why does it involve you at all?
And I'll tell her about... I'm not going to tell her about my reservations with Aunt Nancy because we're off-world and know better than to talk about that sort of thing. Well, Aunt Nancy could be listening.
Okay.
But I will tell her about the other teams and how one of them has been apparently ripping through the ranks of other teams. It says if two teams can stand strong against theirs, then our likelihood of survival is higher.
Here's what you get from Kakina. She says she will sit down at the table. But the first time the old man opens his mouth and says something she doesn't like, she walks. And she will consider this to be a personal favor to you. If you can live with that, so can she.
It seems like that's as far as... Well, would you allow the two of us to mediate? To stay there at the table? In your discussion?
She recommends that you bring something to shield yourself from the thrown food and wine.
Can't throw food if you leave.
Too true. And then finally, do you lie to Middle Bob and tell him that Kakeen has agreed? Or you already have done that?
Yes.
Okay. So the last thing we need to get in line is...
I didn't lie to him at the time and say she had agreed. I said that she would agree. That I
Okay.
would get her to agree.
Okay. So you're kind of hoping that it sorts itself out at the table at this point.
A bit.
Liberation. What is... Which name do you give Redfern as far as somebody you can convert to the Godsman?
As far as Redfern is concerned, unfortunately, I don't know these people. I don't know. You know your family better than I do.
Well, this is taking place over the course of 3 months, and you're conferring with your companions in between this. You can just assume they know everything, or you know everything they know.
I feel like it might be 4 months at this point.
6 years have gone by.
Well, we're taking really good advantage of the difference in times between planes.
Yeah.
Right. So Liberation can work with the knowledge that everybody else has of all the other middle mobs. That's fine.
Honestly, I don't think that the God, I get so many goddamn names on this. I can't keep them all straight.
That's
A
why I
lot of
take
names.
notes.
Just give them all nicknames like I do.
Honestly, I think it's up to him to convince his. It would be in his best interest to convince him one of his family members himself. I can't speak for anyone else in that regard. I can't speak for your family. You know them better than I do. You know the ones who would be more amenable to.
Then he does not
To
agree to
this
come
way.
to the table. Because you're right, he does know his family better than you, and he knows that none of them are able to walk this path. That's what you're supposed to convince him of. You're supposed to convince him that there's a middle mob who is worthy of that path. If that's the best you can give him, then he's not coming to the table.
Then Kekina, maybe.
Kekina? Unpack that a little bit. Why would you put forth her name?
It seems like the only thing she cares about wealth for is to give it to those who deserve it, to help the poor, and I respect that. That's why I think that she's probably the most amenable to this. Like she's not in her lifestyle for her own profit. She's in it for making other people's lives better. And maybe in that way, she's helping others find their own true path.
And he points out that she's also old and stubborn, set in her ways. But he's made note that you have great respect for a thief and a robber. However, on the other hand, she's the only other one that lives with nature, that refuses to live in a gilded castle. How does Liberation have any... Does he try to sell Kekina on this at all at any point?
Yes, in as much as to give John Redfern a fair shake, give his thoughts a serious consideration.
Speaking to Kekina, when you pay her a visit, same deal. They find you in the forest, put a bag over your head, bring you out there.
They get a bigger bag for my horns.
She has great respect for Redfern. One of the things she respects about him is that he threw away his given name and assumed one of his own. He wasn't one of... Actually, yes, he was one of the middle mobs. Then he took a new name. Her issue with Redfern is that his head's in the clouds. He's an idealist. He doesn't see how the world actually works. He doesn't know... He would rather spend his time in the woods pretending that the world is a great and wonderful place filled with beauty, and he won't lift a finger to stand against the evils that are actually part of this world. That's what she doesn't like about Redfern. Here's the other thing about Kekina. You have to remember she's a prime, whereas Redfern is from Bytopia.
Mm-hmm.
She doesn't know anything about the factions. So what is Liberation's sales pitch about the Godsmen? Like, how do you explain the Godsman philosophy to her?